Survivors of attempted murder. What is your story? Story 1. I was shot twice in the head while camping in a Forest Service campground, so not on some dude's property. The asshole woke me up in the middle of the night with a strobe light. I had never met him, and I definitely never did anything to him. He was on meth, and I guess went cruising for some murdering, and thankfully he effed up. I woke up to my tent flashing. There was no cell service whatsoever where I was camping, so after a period of just being completely dazed and confused, I decided that I would just face whatever was coming. I got out of my tent expecting something to happen pretty quick, but nothing did. The strobe light was set up a bit behind my car, so I was pretty sure going for my car was the wrong call, but I was pretty much at a loss for what I should do. I stood there for a while with my cell phone's flashlight, trying to think of something, when he finally decided to do something. The first shot just grazed the back of my head and just nicked my ear. It scared the shit out of me and spun me around a bit. The second bullet hit between my ear and beard and knocked me over sideways. The impact of it was by far the loudest thing I've ever heard. Thankfully, it hit at an angle and was a small caliber. Never really got an answer for what exact caliber it was, so instead of effing up my brain, it bounced off of my skull and just broke most of the bones in my cheek and around my eye. I lay there, in my tent, having decided to just let him take whatever he wanted, and thought intensely about my breathing until I heard the loudest truck I've ever heard start up and drive away. Thinking back, I still don't understand why he shot me and didn't even steal anything. I'm pretty sure I was saying this over and over in the first hospital that I was at, but at the time I just thought, well, time to get up. So I pushed myself to my feet, found my glasses, and went to my car. My glasses, and everything else, were covered with blood, so I found a bottle of water and started cleaning them off when I heard the truck come back. I absolutely freaked the F out. I tried to hide by leaning down into the passenger seat, but my car was packed with stuff for camping, so I couldn't get down very far. I guess it was enough though, because he just drove a loop around the campground and then left. I quickly finished cleaning my glasses, wiped off the windshield. It was extremely fogged up, so I could see, and started up my car. I managed to back out of the space I was in and drove out of the campground and down the highway. I found a big space to pull over that also just barely had cell service and called 911. I was pretty out of it by then and was starting to throw up a lot, but I managed to tell the amazingly patient woman that answered where I was. 3 surgeries and 7 total nights in a hospital later, I've lost most of the vision in my eye, and one of the muscles in my jaw had to be surgically detached. But somehow I don't have any hearing loss. Decently bad tinnitus though. The police thankfully caught the guy pretty quick, and he's still awaiting trial. Story 2. A boyfriend beat the hell out of me in the middle of a snowstorm and left me to die. Hypothermia, fractured skull, broken ribs. I had to have my nose and orbital bones reconstructed. Blood transfusions, 15 stitches in my mouth, broken teeth, a broken hand. A year of physical therapy because I tore both ACLs trying to get away. I've been in 3x-a-week therapy for a decade. I skipped a song on the iPod we were both using when we were high as kites. I never found out what person was crazy enough to be jogging in February and in the middle of the night in Canada that found me, but they saved my life. Story 3. My biological mother is schizophrenic and decided to go off her medications once again. During that time, she decided that I was going to be safer with the angels than with all the demons. Some of these were straight-up delusions and others were fueled by pure paranoia. So she took me into the bathroom, filled up the tub, and nearly succeeded in drowning me. Would have succeeded had the man she was shacked up with at the time not walked in at the right moment, dragged her off of me, and started to administer CPR until the EMTs arrived. Thankfully, this incident finally allowed the courts to pull their heads out of their asses and remove me from her custody and have her declared as an unfit parent. This could have likely been prevented had they figured that considering she was declared unfit twice, when in custody battles involving both my younger siblings, the court would have been like, and if she is unfit for them, maybe she is unfit to care for her eldest. But alas, this was 24 years ago, when the court system was even worse than it is today about this kind of thing. The only lasting damage I really had from this event was that for the majority of my childhood and into my late teens I had a deep phobia of bathtubs. When I was younger, I was so terrified of them, I would have panic attacks if I even had to use the toilet in a bathroom that had a tub in it. That level dropped as I got older into an extreme dislike and aversion to them, but at least I didn't have panic attacks unless I tried to use them. I eventually did get over it. Story 4. I got a job the day I turned 16, but my parents didn't let me get my driver's license until I was 17. This meant that my mom would have to drive me to work after school some days when it was too cold to walk, and it was always a hassle. As per usual, I was in my uniform, waiting for her by the garage. She was dragging her feet, and if I waited any longer, I would be late for work. I reminded her what time I had to work, and she completely lost it. Screaming at me about how selfish and ungrateful I am, she drags me by my arm to the car. Barely letting the garage door open, she took off down the suburban residential road, easily doing 70 miles per hour. I was scared. She was screaming and driving like a crazy person. Maybe 500 feet ahead of us, there was a truck stopped at a stop sign. She was still driving incredibly fast and not looking, staring me down while screaming at me. She was about to hit the truck. I grabbed the passenger handle and yelled out to her, "Stop. You're going to kill us." I'll never forget that specific moment. I yelled. She slammed on the brakes, looked over at me, and deathly quietly said, "Good." She took off again and started gaining speed. I believed her. I thought she was going to intentionally kill me and herself in a car accident. Searching for options, I figured the only way to survive was to tuck and roll. She must have seen what I was going for, because as soon as I undid my seatbelt and reached for the door handle, she slammed on the brakes again. I rocketed forward into the windshield and instantly broke my nose. Blood was effing everywhere, and it was silent in her car. I got out, and she drove away without a word. I walked the rest of the way to work, and my manager took me to the quick care clinic. My mom has been an addict my entire life, and a narcissist to boot. She was going through withdrawal at the time. I remember that week, and she tried to kill me. I now live on the opposite coast and have very low contact. Story 5. Here's the abridged version of what happened to me and my upper-middle-class suburban family. I could write all day about every detail, but my hands are already shaking from adrenaline, so pardon any errors. My oldest three of us, I'm the youngest, brother was a Marine, came home from the war in pretty rough shape, struggled with PTSD pretty seriously, was afraid to seek help and slash, or thought it wouldn't be worthwhile, but had made a lot of progress after getting out of the Marines. Good FIFO job, girlfriend, started a band, had some issues with substance abuse and whatnot. My brothers and I were best friends. We were really close. We got into a fight one night. A was 20 and had just picked up my brothers from a bar. He tried to choke me out while I was driving, and he was in the back seat. I had some shit to do, and he wanted me to take him somewhere, and I was just trying to take them home. I remember my other brother diving into the back seat to get him off of me as things started going dark. Got the car to a stop, and they are fighting in the back seat. I open the car door and they spill into the street. It ends. No, it doesn't. My oldest brother went to the other one's house that night, broke in while he was sleeping, and beat the shit out of him, threw him through a wall. Let me pause here. My sister was meant to get married on a Saturday. This was the Tuesday before. They got into it again the following Wednesday morning at my parents' house. Someone called the police, and the older one was sent to the hospital for a psych eval. He passed it. Not really. The person who gave the evil was not a doctor and was not qualified to perform the evil, and was released. I was living with my parents at the time. My brother shows up at like 1 a.m. on Friday after the rehearsal dinner. Breaks in. He's hammered, yelling at my parents who are in bed. I'm in the doorway to my parents' room, and I realize he has his 357 on him. I feel in my bones that this isn't going to go well, and make a move to get the gun away from him. We start fighting. He was about twice my size. He basically slams me up against the wall and pistol whips me in the forehead, and it starts leaking pretty good. He shoots my father in the back. Then he shoots me in the chest and kills himself in front of me. He fell on my mother, snapped her leg, and she still has trouble walking today. 5 years, 1 month, and 2 days later, there was blood everywhere. 3 people all bleeding to death in one room. My lung exploded. I can still remember feeling my chest bubbling with every breath, drowning in my own blood. The police flooded my house after about 15 to 20 minutes. I flatlined twice. 10 days in ICU, 2 more weeks in the hospital, lost half my left lung, 4 shattered ribs, nerve damage. But I am alive, so is my father. To this day I wonder if I had just driven him to where he wanted to go, how different things could have been. I miss him every day. He wasn't an evil person, he wasn't a bad person, he just needed some help. We now run a nonprofit in his name. Story 6. My abusive mother went crazier than usual and had a complete break with reality when we were snowed in alone for 3 days. On day 2 in the afternoon, she started talking about suicide and how we were already dead and stuff. We all need to get it over with. We need to eat the dogs. What? We had food. Better we die fast than slow. When she went outside to look for some twigs, a wood stove and a converted school bus parked in a mountain area. I hid all the sharp objects. She comes back in with this weird look in her eyes, like they were just empty, nobody home, and demanded that I bring her the sharpest knife I can find. I pretend to search while trying unsuccessfully to talk her down. She gets more and more angry, refuses to tell me what she wants the knife for, and eventually I offer her a spatula since she keeps insisting she needs something with a sharp edge. She knocks the spatula out of my hand, calls me a useless bitch, and starts beating me up. I just let her hit me because I was hoping that would satisfy her enough that she wouldn't harm the dogs or keep looking for a weapon. She finished slapping me around, yelled some more, kicked stuff, threw things at me, and stormed back outside. Came back in maybe 10 minutes later, calm and collected. Asked me if I want lunch, like nothing had happened. We were rescued late the following night and spent the rest of the winter in a homeless shelter. I was 17. The dogs were fine. They were fostered until my stepdad found us a rental. Mom had in the past choked me, beaten my head on a concrete floor, and threatened me repeatedly with hammers. Said she'd bury me in the woods and tell everyone that I ran away. But I'd never seen her eyes empty like that before. Usually she was either raging out, or she had this dark joy in her eyes that showed she was enjoying hurting me. I turned 18, joined the Navy, and never looked back. Story 7. When I was in my early/mid-teens, I was walking through the neighborhood with 3 friends, and an old man in a truck slowed down as he passed us and gave us a hard stare. He pulled over just past us on the little side road we were walking on. As we continued on our way, he got out and started following us. Honestly, I thought he was just someone in need of directions. We walked to the end of the road where it intersected with the main road, and there were lots of lights, just erring on the side of safety. Safely under the lights, I walked over to meet him, still thinking this old man, who looked like Santa Claus, was in need of some kind of assistance. He walked up to me like we were going to have a polite chat, but he was difficult to understand. Maybe an accent, maybe mumbling, maybe just old. I leaned in closer to try to understand him, but then just sucker punched me in the jaw. It hurt, but I didn't go down. Turns out he was drunk. Drunk and angry. The nearest home to our location was a family friend, so me and one friend went to her house to call the police, then returned to the scene. When we reached the scene, the old man was gone, and his truck was left in the road. My friends were by the truck, so we joined them. They explained that he had walked back to the truck, so they followed him, but kept on going into a nearby house. It was at that point he came out carrying a shotgun. We quickly jumped into a small patch of wooded area and hid behind some large boulders while he began to hunt for us. Fortunately, at that moment the police arrived and held him at gunpoint until he dropped his gun and gave up. I still have no idea what prompted him to be angry and follow us. It seemed like it was just a case of him being angry about kids walking on his street. That irrational damn kids get off my lawn kind of old people, anger that only old people understand. Story 8. My biological mom has schizophrenia. She would beat me, cut me, and do terrible things since she thought I was a demon. I was only 4. At some point she snapped, stabbed my dad in the neck, and came at me with a butcher knife next. I got cut a few times, 3 on the arm and 1 in the corner of my eye. My dad managed, while bleeding out the neck, to show up and chokehold her until she managed to escape. She returned while he wasn't looking, grabbed me and kidnapped me, took me out of state, and to a hospital where she said I was attacked by some kids. But it didn't matter. The place she took me like a week later got found super fast somehow. Police everywhere, and I was rescued. Now I have severe PTSD. Made it ultra hard to be around crowds, people yelling and being angry, but it has gotten easier. I developed a no-flight, only fight response, so I instantly swing if someone spooks me hard enough. I'm 32 now. Nightmares love me. Scars were deep enough that they haven't faded completely. She also once used a pair of scissors to mutilate my ears, so they're kind of serrated around the outrage. I've been more recently diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, so I got that going for me, which is nice. More seriously, I won't let it turn me into her.